Welcome to this video in which we are going to implement a basic JavaFX application step by step. First of all, let's have a look at the software that we are going to use to build this application. We firstly need to have installed a version of JDK, Java Development Kit, in order to compile and run our application. In our case, we are going to use OpenJDK version 11. Next, we also need an IDE, an integrated development environment, in order to type the code, compile, fix bugs, and so on. We are going to use IntelliJ IDE for this purpose. Next, we need a JavaFX library available in order to be associated to our project and work with JavaFX elements. We are going to use OpenJFX version 11 in our project. And finally, we need a graphical tool to graphically design the appearance of our applications, labels, buttons, text fields, and so on. The most popular one is Scene Builder. We can use Scene Builder as a standalone application or as a plugin integrated with IntelliJ IDE, as we will see later. Regarding JDK, to compile and run our Java applications, we are going to use OpenJDK. We can choose our desired versions in this URL. In our case, we have chosen version 11 because it's the latest LTS version. This is long-term support version. So we just need to download the appropriate package according to our operating system and decompress it in our desired folder. In my case, I have decompressed this JDK in my hard drive, and inside this folder we can find a bin subfolder which contains the applications or tools that we are going to use to compile and run our Java applications. Java C application to compile and Java to run these applications. So we need to add this folder, this bin subfolder, in the path environment variable of our system. In this case, inside Windows, we just copy this path and add it to path environment variable in order to run these applications, these tools to compile and run Java applications. Regarding the ID, we are going to use IntelliJ. We can download it from this URL. We need to choose the community version, which is specific for Java projects, and also it's free. We just download it and install it in our system. JavaFX library can be found inside this Gluon website. We can choose the version associated to our operating system, but in this case we don't need to download anything from here, because from current IntelliJ version this step is automatically done from our IntelliJ project, so we don't need to care about this website. Finally, we can choose Scene Builder in order to graphically design our application. Inside Gluon website, we can download the tool and choose the appropriate version for our Java version. If we are using Java 11 or higher versions, we need to download the specific package according to our operating system and install it. This step must be done only if you are planning to use Scene Builder as a standalone application. If you want to use it integrated inside IntelliJ, you don't need to download this. From IntelliJ, we will download the Scene Builder plugin corresponding to our ID. So let's move to next step. We are going to create a new JavaFX project and set it up. From IntelliJ welcome screen, or from the main scene inside file menu, we can see a new project option. We can click on it and choose to create a JavaFX project. We must assign a name for this project. We are going to call it calculator FX. It will be placed inside IntelliJ's default folder, idea projects, in our home folder. And we can choose more options for this project. The default language, which will be Java. The dependency manager that we are going to use Maven as our dependency manager, and that's why we don't need to care about downloading additional libraries such as JavaFX. Maven will do this task for us, as we will see later. Finally, we can choose a test framework to test our program. The default option is JUnit, although we are not going to use any of these options in this video. Finally, we can assign a group to our project. This is just some kind of global package in which we can place everything in our project. Let's call it, for instance, calculator. Finally, in the artifact section, we can assign a name to the artifact. This is the final file name that will be generated when we build the whole project, although we are not going to use this in this video. So we click on next option. We can choose additional dependencies or libraries that we want to install. In this case, we don't need anything of this scene, and click on finish option. Then a project will be created with a default structure. This is our project name, calculator FX. We have a src folder, a source folder, with some subfolders on it. There's a main subfolder with all the contents placed here. The source code will be placed inside this Java folder, which is colored in blue. So every package and subpackage that we need to define will be placed inside this folder. As you can see, there is an initial package called calculator.calculatorfx. Calculator is the group name that we have set when we have created the project in IntelliJ, and calculatorfx is the name of the project. So by default, this is the initial package for all our classes. Anyway, we can create additional package or rename existing ones through the refactor menu. Inside this package, there are two initial classes. A class called Hello Controller, which will be the controller associated to our application, as we will see later, and the main program, which is a Hello application. Inside this program, we can see a main method that just calls a method called launch, and a start method, which is the one that shows our application. As you can see, we are loading an fxml file, which is the one located inside this folder. Inside the resources folder, we can place anything that is not source code, but that we can treat in parallel with source code. As you can see, there is a subfolder with the same name that the source code package, and inside this subfolder we can place fxml files or images or anything that needs to be accessed from our code. So with this instruction that we are seeing here, we are loading the contents of this fxml file to show these contents in the window that will be shown at the end. We can run this application. The first time that we want to run it, we just need to right click on the main class and choose run. And then we can see a small window with a hello button on it, and if we click on this button, then a label is shown. This is a sample application to show you how to work with JavaFX. But what about the libraries that we need? What about JavaFX? If we have a look at external libraries section, we can see that everything is automatically added. Everything regarding JavaFX library is automatically added here thanks to Maven Dependency Manager. This file, pom.xml, is the Maven configuration file in which Maven knows every additional library that needs to be downloaded to this project. So we are working with JavaFX version 11, and that's why Maven downloads exactly this version from its repository. We don't need to care about it. Now that we have created our project, we need to define the layout of our application. This is place the different components of our application and arrange them so that we can see how they are shown when we run the application. In order to define the layout of our application, we can do it manually, editing this fxml content, which is not recommended, but we can also swap to this secondary tab, which is Scene Builder, in order to use Scene Builder to design our application. The first time that you click on this tab, you may be asked to download either JavaFX or Scene Builder from an error message in this upper bar. You can see an error message with a link to download either JavaFX or Scene Builder plugin for IntelliJ. In my case, I have this plugin already installed, and that's why Scene Builder is automatically shown. In this left side, we can choose among the different containers and controls that IntelliJ JavaFX has, and in this right panels we can change the properties associated to each control. So first of all, let's have a look at what is placed by default in our sample application. We have a VBox container with a label and the button. This is the button that we clicked before, and this is the label that is automatically shown when we click the button. We don't need anything of this, so we can just remove or delete the whole container with all of its components. But before this, let's have a look at the text tab. You can see this is the VBox main container with the label and button inside of it, and the VBox is associated to the Hello Controller class through the FX Controller attribute. This is important because as soon as we remove this VBox from Scene Builder, then the relationship, the link with the controller will be lost, and we need to manually add this line to the new main container. So we remove this main container and we add a new one. For instance, we are going to use an anchor pane. We drag the anchor pane container inside this area, we can resize it, and then inside this anchor pane we are going to place all the components that we need. We go to the control section, and then we are going to use two text fields, one for the first number and another one for the second number. We can align them using the guides provided by Scene Builder. We are going to use a choice box or a combo box to choose the operation to be performed, an addition, a subtraction, a multiplication, and so on. So we drag the combo box inside the scene between these two text fields, or below them, as we prefer. I'm going to place it here. Finally, we add a button to calculate the result. The user will type a number here, a number here, we'll choose an operation and click on the button that calculates the final result. And finally, we add a label at the bottom to show the result calculated when we fire or action this button. We can change some properties for this label from the properties section. For instance, the text, let's change it to a green color. And also we are going to increase the size of the font. For instance, this size. We align the label here, and this is the appearance of our application. If we try to run the application now, we can see that the initial size doesn't correspond to the container that we have placed here. We have to resize the window in order to see all the components. This can be fixed if we click on the anchor pane and have a look at its size. We can go to the layout section and see the preferred width and height. In our case, we need to copy these values to our main application. Go here and change the default width and height. This way, when we run the application again, we can see its original size. Next step consists in enabling the controller. This is associate the controller to the fxml file in order to add the components from the fxml to the Java code. In order to do this, we need to go to the fxml file, go to the text tab, and add inside the main container the reference to the controller. As you have seen before, there should be an fx controller attribute pointing to the controller class. This attribute has been removed when we changed the default main container, so we just add it again. fx controller pointing to calculator.calculatorfx.hello controller class. This way, fxml file is automatically connected to hello controller. Every component that is added here can be also added to the controller to manipulate it from the Java code. But in order to do this, we need to assign an ID, a name, to every control that we need to access from Java code. From Scene Builder, we can choose each of these controls and assign an FX ID. We choose, for instance, the first text field, go to the code section in the right, and assign this text field an FX ID in this section. We are going to call this text field txt number 1. We click on the enter button, we press the enter button, and then we do the same for the rest of the controls. Second text field will be called txt number 2. Combo box will be called combo operator. The button doesn't need to be accessed from Java code, but we also need the label to print the final result. This label will be called LBL result, for instance. All these names that we have specified here are automatically added to the fxml file. You can find it here, but they are not present inside this controller class yet. We can remove previous content which was associated to default application, but these controls are no longer present in our new fxml file, so we can remove them. And then we are going to include all these fields, all these attributes inside our controller class. We click on the first one, txt number 1, then we can see a yellow bulb in the left margin. We click on it and choose the option to create field txt number 1. This way we create this new field with the same name in our controller. We repeat this step for every control that we need to add to the Java code. second text field, combo box, and finally the label at the bottom. So this way we have our 4 controls added to the controller. However, these controls should be private instead of public. So we change the visibility of these controls. And then we get another error in our fxml file. As these controls are private in the class, they are no longer associated with these controls in the fxml file. Hopefully there is a solution for this. We click on each control, go to the red bulb on the left margin and choose to annotate this field for every control that is being highlighted in red. This way, in our controller, every attribute remains private but has been associated with an fxml association. This annotation directly connects every attribute with its corresponding field in the fxml file. So we have everything added here. If we run the application, we get the same result, but we can't do anything with this application yet. We could, for instance, populate this combo box with the default options, the 4 default arithmetic operators. In order to do this, we have to initialize our controller. So we need to make the controller implement initializable interface. This implies implementing a given method called initialize, and inside this initialize method we can place the code that needs to be run when the application starts. In our case, we are going to populate this combo with some default operators. We go to combo operator attribute, we get its current items, and we add to this collection all the elements that we need. In our case, the 4 arithmetic operators: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. This way, if we run the application, we can see these options inside the combo box and choose any of them for our purpose. However, if we fill the text fields and click on the calculate button, nothing happens. We need to move to next step. In this last step, we are going to add events to our application. An event is something that happens in the application that lets us respond to this event. For instance, if we click on the button, then a button click event has happened, and we can respond to this button click by showing some kind of results or response in our application. How to define events in this simple calculator? We need to select the element on which we want to activate the event. We are going to activate a click or action event over this button, and then move to the code section on the right. Apart from the FX ID that we could assign to every component or control in our application, there is a list of events that can be fired for every component. For instance, this text file can respond to these events, and this button can respond to these events as well. The default event for a button is the action event. When we click on this button, this action will be fired. In this text field, we need to specify the method name that will be called as soon as we click on this button. Let's call this method calculate. So, if we go to the text tab, there is a new element an attribute called onAction, pointing to a method called calculate that doesn't exist yet in our controller. If we want to add it, we just click on the action name, go to the red bulb and choose create method calculate in controller. Then this method is automatically created, and inside this method we are going to place the code that will be run as soon as we click on the calculate button. What we need to do here is get the values of both text fields, first number, second number, get the value chosen in the combo box, and depending on this value we are going to perform the associated arithmetic operation. So first of all, let's get both numbers. Number 1 will be the one typed in the first text field. This way we get the text from this text field and we need to convert it to integer. So this way we get the integer that has been typed inside the first text field. We repeat this instruction to get the number from the second text field. And finally we can see, get the operator from the combo box. We go to combo operator attribute, get its selection model in order to get the selected item. As we are placing strings inside this combo, we can specify it with using generics so that the conversion is automatically done. The item selected from this combo box is just a string and can be directly associated or assigned to a string variable. Then, depending on this operator value, we need to perform an operation or another different operation. So with a switch case structure, we can compare the value of this operator and do the final arithmetic operation. If it's an addition, then we place in the label result the result of adding number 1 and number 2. As this is an integer result, we need to convert it to a string in order to set the text of the label. We can do it by calling string value of method. In the same way, we can repeat this structure to fill the code of every operator, either the subtraction by changing the arithmetic operator, the multiplication, and the division. And that's all. If we run the application again, we can type any pair of numbers in these text fields, choose the corresponding arithmetic operator, and as soon as we click on the calculate button, we can see the final result in the result label. We have done an addition here, but we can also have a multiplication, a division, and we can get the final result here. So we have implemented a simple JavaFX application with some controls, some simple event, so that we can have an idea about how to arrange components in the application, adding events, and so on. Remember to pay attention to the main class in order to change the size of the main container according to the size that you can find here in the layout section. Okay, and also in this main application you can change the title of the main window. inside this title method, you can change the title that is shown here in the upper bar of the window. So that's all. That's how we can create a simple JavaFX application using JDK and IntelliJ.